Welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk Civilly podcast. I am Cleveland L. Horton II. I have the pleasure of serving as the Executive Director of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights and your host for today's podcast. Before we dive deep into the podcast, I want to take a moment just to speak to all of you directly. So yes, that's you, and that's you too, right? I really want to talk about what we see happening within many of our communities right now. When we think about the era of divisiveness, we think about the era of darkness that we find ourselves in right now. And I want to speak to each of you because I believe wholeheartedly that in every generation, there comes a moment for us to decide what this country is going to be. We all know the history of our country. We all know the times that we find ourselves in currently. But this moment, right now, requires something different from all of us. As we think about how hate is permeating in many of our communities, as we think about how we're communicating and interacting with each other on a regular basis, we as a community, we means me, we means you, need to figure out how we step up to this moment. It is our time to decide if we are going to leave our country better than what it was before we inherited it. So my challenge for all of us today is more love, less hate. Matter of fact, let's make that go viral. Hashtag more love, less hate. As I serve as the Executive Director of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, I know that each and every day I have the opportunity to impact the communities that we serve. But that's not just limited to the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. That's just not limited to elected officials. That responsibility lies at the hands of all of us. That every day we wake up, we should be doing our best to impact the communities that we live in, the communities that we work in, the communities that we worship in. So again, my challenge to each and every person watching or listening to this podcast is let's spread more love, less hate. Hashtag more love, less hate. We all know that hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. So again, I just want to urge everybody, please, let's make it go viral, right? We know on this, with the social media scene, that there are a lot of viral moments. Let's make this one. Go call someone that you haven't talked to in a long time. Ask them how they're doing. Let them know that you love them. Go talk to a coworker that maybe is new on the scene, that maybe not have a lot of friends or coworkers yet because they're just new to your place of employment. Go talk to them. Get to know them a little bit. Go speak to the neighbor who may have just moved in, who is new to the neighborhood, maybe even new to the state. Get to know them, their family. Just let them know that they have a friend in their neighbor. How many of us went to work today, got coffee, and maybe didn't even speak to just one person? You never know how a simple hi can change someone's day. So again, I urge all of us, as we think about where we are, let's talk less about the difficulties, less about the darkness, and let's bring some love. Let's bring some light. Again, hashtag more love, less hate. And with that, I have the honor of being the host today, but more importantly, I have the honor of being here with, I consider to be one of the most transformational leaders in our state, our Lieutenant Governor, Aruna Miller. As we think about Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, I have the opportunity to sit beside not just the first immigrant, but also the first female South Asian elected to statewide office. And while those things are very, very important, for me, there are some things that are even more important about our Lieutenant Governor. The fact that every time we call the Lieutenant Governor and say, hey, we're having a symposium, a webinar, a podcast, the Lieutenant Governor doesn't hesitate to show up. You have a lot of people who talk the talk, but our Lieutenant Governor walks the walk. And I am proud to say that she's more than just our Lieutenant Governor. She is a friend to the agency. And to that that relationship is more important than anything else. The fact that she cares about not just about what we do, but how we impact every Marylander in our state, how we're able to protect the rights of every Marylander in our state. So as we continue this conversation today, I want everybody to recognize that we have greatness in our state, and we have one of the greatest leaders here on our podcast today. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself, but I wanted to preface her remarks first by just simply letting you all know that it's one thing to be called lieutenant governor. It's one thing to act as the lieutenant governor. So again, welcome Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller.
Wow, Director Horton, I don't know what to say with that introduction. My goodness. And especially hearing it from you, who's been a justice warrior, civil rights warrior. You have dedicated your life to this. I understand you worked at this commission for over 18 years.
Yes.
That is dedication. That is more love, less hate.
Thank you.
I thank you for your extraordinary leadership.
Thank you.
Now, as director of the Civil Rights Commission.
Thank you.
We are so blessed to have you in this role.
Thank you.
Not just that, but I know you're a true Marylander from head to toe. This is where you were born. This is where you were raised. You went to school here, and you're giving back to your community.
Yes.
Love to hear it. It is such an honor for me to be sitting here next to you, someone that I look up to, and everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think for us, as we are here to obviously acknowledge, celebrate, and recognize Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, one of the things that we want to talk about is how has your lived experience, right? We all experience things differently.
Sure.
How has your lived experience as an immigrant arriving here in the United States, which I believe at the age of 7, right? How has that shaped your approach to civil rights and inclusivity within our state?
Oh, that's a great question. Look, when you come here as an immigrant, you are so grateful for the opportunities that have been given to you. And I often talk about the 1964 Civil Rights Act. I remember coming to one of your galas and actually talking about the impact that it had on my life. But it's not just my life, it's how it changed the trajectories of all our lives. The Black activists, the freedom fighters, during the 1960s, when they were able to pass the 1964 Civil Rights Act, it changed everything. Let me talk about a little bit of some of the things. It ended legal segregation. It desegregated schools. It outlawed workplace discrimination. It strengthened voting rights. And one of the most important things I think it also did is it showed that nonviolent civil disobedience that can come about by regular everyday people, how that can change things, right? So through the boycotts, the sit-ins, the organized protests, and it's showing in movements that have taken place in modern day, right? From Black Lives Matter to March for Our Lives to the Gaza ceasefire protests. Right? This has a significant impact on all of us. So for me as an immigrant, I can say that it was the 1964 Civil Rights Act that immediately led to the 1965 Immigration Act. Because America's awareness of its own racial inconsistencies that they only saw within the borders, all of a sudden President Johnson said, wait a minute, what about beyond the borders? We're discriminating against who can be an American and who can't. So the Immigration Act of 1965 actually led to lifting up racial quotas. So people from South America, Asia, Africa can come here and be an American. That's the impact that civil rights has had on me. So you can imagine having that to be an American. That's a lens in which I look through everything. How can we make our civil rights even stronger for every group that is suffering? Not just groups, but individuals, right? That's our goal.
Yes, and that's very powerful. I think, in listening to your response, I'm reminded of one of Ronald Reagan's last speeches. And in his speech, and we even played a clip of that at one of our most recent galas about how he talks about the fact that no matter where you come from, you can come here and be an American.
That's right.
Right? But you can't go to other countries and do the same thing, right?
Absolutely.
And it is truly about, when we think about our differences and how our country is built on our differences, and we're stronger as a result of our differences. So I think just listening to your powerful response really just brought that to mind for me, listening to your response, and just thinking about really where we are as we continue to see hate dividing so much of we know that what makes us this great nation. It's just our differences, right?
You got it.
When you think about the AAPI community and it being so incredibly diverse, encompassing dozens of cultures and languages, how do you ensure that marginalized or underrepresented groups within this massive umbrella, such as Pacific Islanders or specific South and East Asian communities, have their unique civil rights and social economic needs heard by the state?
That's a great question, and I have to tell you, is the AIPI community is extremely diverse. Now, while we're considered a minority in this country, I just want your listeners to know that Asians represent over 60% of the global population. So there's 4.8 billion Asians in the world, right? And representing over 30 countries. They speak over hundreds of languages. In fact, they speak the most spoken language in the world, which of course is Mandarin, right?
Okay.
From China. Yes, that's the world's most spoken language. And yet, here in the United States, we often get treated like one community with one set of needs. That's not inclusion. That's oversimplification of one group of individuals. So this AAPI really is a category that masks everything. Look, given the fact that we come from such diverse backgrounds, we have diversity of thought. We're not a monolithic group. It's not that we all care about the same exact issues. Of course, in general, look, just like any other American, right? You want to have good education, you want to feel safe, you want to make sure that you can build a better world than, like you said earlier, than the one we found. You want to give opportunities to your family. I mean, that is of every individual. But when you break it down to specific individual Asian communities, there are certain ones that probably deal with poverty at a much higher rate than others. There's ones that are more discriminated because of their faith than others. And so there is no one size fits all when it comes to addressing the needs of the AAPI community. And Governor Moore and I are clearly aware of that. So, how are we addressing this? Well, number one, we want to make sure representation is there. Governor Moore and I have created the most diverse cabinet in Maryland's history, where 50% of our cabinet secretaries are women and 50% are people of color. In fact, at one point, we had over, I believe, 6 AAPI cabinet members, the most in the continental United States.
Okay. Diversity matters.
Diversity absolutely matters. Is this a checkbox? No, it's not a checkbox. The excellence has always been there amongst the minority groups. Unfortunately, they weren't given access for leadership.
Okay.
Governor Moore and I both recognize that when we have leaders that reflect our communities, they're the ones who can best tell us what the community needs are as well, right? You and I can't just figure out what every single community needs are.
So true.
Right? You got to bring in a trusted member of the community that can, talk to the community, comes back with us and tells us what the needs are. So we're doing that. And I'm also the chair of the Interfaith Council. You know that when you have diverse communities, it comes with diverse faiths.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And faith communities are often the first places that immigrant communities go to because they trust that space. So those faith leaders, when we bring them to our administration, we're asking them, what are the needs of your community so we can better serve them?
Okay.
And then, of course, we've also created the Immigration Affairs Office. This is the first ever. Actually, it was spearheaded by Speaker Jocelyn Pena Melnick. And unfortunately, with the previous administration, it was never funded. But Governor Moore came in, said, nope, we're going to fund that. We're going to have that office here because we know our immigrant community deals with a lot of challenges when it comes to navigating the government.
I like that. And then, just so you know, I know our agency has, again, partnered up with the Immigration Task Force that came out of that as well.
Yeah,
And we are looking forward to contributing and assisting in that work because we know that
thank you.
our immigrant community is just as important as any other community that we have here in our state.
Absolutely.
And we want to make sure that we're doing our part to support our immigrant community. Also, you kind of you kind of touched on a topic that I think a lot of organizations can miss at times, and that is meeting people where they are.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
That we know that as governmental entities, sometimes the trust is not there with the public for a variety of different factors.
Yep.
And it's important for us to partner with organizations that can be that bridge connector that allows us to reach people where they are, allows us to get our messaging out to individuals that may, in other settings, be less likely to listen to the messaging coming from a governmental agency or even seek out the support or assistance from a governmental agency. With our education outreach director, Candace Crenshaw, she has been truly innovative in how we address that particular issue. So we have what she calls convos and cinemas, right? Where we go out, typically it's at like a library or some venue that allows us to play a film
Yeah.
and then have a conversation about it,
What
right?
a fantastic idea.
So this month has been all around AAPI
Yeah.
and how we can play films that, again, highlight Asian American and Pacific Islander history and issues, and then allow the community to engage in conversation, right? So we are, through that, just the convener of the setting to allow people to engage in conversation, which then allows us to engage them as well and engage them in conversation to, again, lower that trust barrier that's there, right? Where now folks see you as an ally,
Yeah.
right? And not an adversary. So we are extremely proud of all the work that our education outreach team has done around making sure that we have really, what we say is we take our agency from within the four walls of our buildings and place it back in the community where it belongs, right? Because in order to serve the community, you have to be in the community.
You got it.
Right.
And I love the fact that you're using arts
Yep.
as a way in which you bring community together, right?
So one of the things, Lieutenant Governor, that I've always been proud and impressed with you about is not just your actions, but your voice, right? The fact that you've always been willing to use your voice to talk about issues. You recently testified in support of House Bill 1488, which was created to modernize the Maryland Constitution by replacing gender-specific language with gender-neutral terminology. Can we talk a little bit about why you believe inclusive language is a fundamental civil rights issue for state government?
Absolutely. Look, our Constitution still refers to all elected officials as he. Clearly, I'm sitting before you. I am not a he. I'm a she, her. Okay, just let me know. But here's the thing. Let me tell you a little bit about the history of our Constitution. So it was ratified in 1867.
Okay.
And since that time, 159 years, there's been over 200 amendments, changes to the Constitution, right? Because humanity is not static. Things change. So our legal documents need to be able to change to meet people where they are. And as a matter of fact, in 1970, the lieutenant governor's office was added to the Constitution.
Okay.
So that's why Maryland, I'm the 10th lieutenant governor, where other states may
In the
have.
best.
Yeah.
In the best. In the best. Let's not leave that out.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think our Constitution should be able to reflect the times that we're living in right now.
Okay.
Right? And here's the thing. Women are, serve in leadership across every level of government, whether they're elected officials, judges, military leaders, constitutional officers. And in fact, right now, 4 out of the 7 constitutional officers in the state of Maryland are served by women. So you have a lieutenant governor that's a woman, comptroller, you have the secretary of state, as well as adjutant general, right? So the majority of the constitutional officers are served by women right now. But yet everything in the Constitution refers to he. And I appreciate Delegate Jones, who is the lead sponsor of this bill, who brought it up. And I think she was doing the right thing. Unfortunately, the bill did not pass. But here's one thing I know about policy, that it often comes back many times over and over. Progress doesn't happen overnight.
It sure doesn't.
It takes a lot of persistence to make progress happen. So I'm hopeful that perhaps next year that this bill will be able to pass. And language is important, because if you don't use the right language, people don't feel included as part of everything that is happening, right? And so that's why it's vitally important language reflect our current, community right now.
I just want to just pause for a second and just say thank you.
Oh, you're
Thank you
welcome.
for showing up. I think, I've been in public service myself for almost 20 years now. Sometimes public service can be a very thankless job, right? There's always individuals who want to talk about um,
The
how they
good
can,
old days?
or how they can do your job, right?
Yeah.
Or how they pay your taxes. I just want to pause for you just to say thank you for showing up. Thank you for not just doing the job. Thank you for giving the job everything you have every single day,
You're
right?
so welcome.
And using your voice to not just impact a small group of people, but really looking at it from a holistic lens of how to use your voice to impact every segment of our state and every group within our state. So I just wanted to just pause for a second to say thank you for continuing to do that.
You're so welcome, Director Horton. Look, we're in this space. You're a public servant.
Yep.
I'm a public servant. That's what we're here for. And really, our democracy should be fighting for the rights of minorities
Yes.
as much as we can.
Yes.
Because the majority already has many of the rights
Yes.
that they need.
Yes.
It's the minority that we need to be able to protect as best as we can.
Yes. I so agree. And I know I kind of started out the podcast talking about hate. And I know that you've been very vocal in calling out hateful language and mockery directed at those within the AAPI community. And in fact, to quote you, saying that diversity is our strength, and we must continue building a state where everyone is treated with dignity. How can state governments legally and culturally push back against hateful rhetoric while balancing constitutional free speech?
Oh, that's a great question. Look, the First Amendment is foundational to our democracy, right? No doubt about it. Protecting free speech doesn't mean remaining silent in the face of racism or hate. As a government of the people, by the people, for the people, means that we don't just have the power, but we have an obligation to protect the rights and safety of all Marylanders, especially those that are being victimized,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so, how do we create a more inclusive state? Well, we can do it through a number of mechanisms. One is through the budget, through policy, and through the executive branch. And through the budget, the governor has already allocated over $10 million related to hate crimes, right? This is happening all over the state, unfortunately, whether it's in faith communities that are being targeted, our synagogues and our mosques and our temples, where hate crimes are taking place. This funding will be able to allow those institutions to have more security, right? So through the budget, we can do this. And I already mentioned earlier the Immigration Affairs Office. Again, it's a group that's totally focused on the issues related to immigrants that they're facing here. Through policy, right? You just saw that this session we were able to pass 287Gs, which basically says that we are not going to use local funds to be able to deputize our police officers and our sheriffs to do the work of ICE agents, right? Look, these egregious actions coming down from the Trump-Vance administration have been so destructive to Maryland communities. And let me tell you why. When you have ICE agents that are just randomly pulling people off the streets, whether it's a child or a student in college or a father who married an American citizen but isn't a citizen himself, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, I think it is. This hurts all of
All
us,
of us.
right?
Yep,
And when families are afraid to take their kids to school, we all pay the price.
we do.
When people who are sick, immigrants, are afraid to go to the hospital to get treatment, our health system all falls down for us. When workers are afraid to report a crime because they fear who's going to show up, that's a safety problem for all of us.
Yes.
So, one thing I want to emphasize is that this isn't just an immigrant issue. Fear doesn't just stay contained. When one community is terrorized, the entire community feels less safe, less healthy, less whole, right?
Yes. Yes. I think one of the things that we're seeing, Lieutenant Governor, and especially a lot of these online platforms, is the spreading of misinformation,
Yes.
right? And we know that recently at a UMBC event, you spoke about how AAPI communities are often targeted by political disinformation on platforms like WhatsApp and WeChat. As someone who has spoken on the dangers of disinformation targeting these communities, especially AAPI voters, what steps in your administration are you all taking to protect the integrity of the vote and ensure civil participation across diverse communities?
Well, I'm so proud to say that Governor Moore just signed into law the Maryland Voting Rights Act of 2026. Now, I want to give credit where credit is due. Lots of people fought for this bill, and that includes the bill sponsors, Senator Charles Sidnor and Delegate Greg Wims. And they also received a lot of support from Legal Defense Fund,
Okay.
right? And let me tell you why this law is so important. It immediately was enacted the day before the U.S. Supreme Court gutted racial redistricting aspects of the Federal Voting Rights Act of 1965. So we know exactly what's happening,
Yes.
right? What's
Yes.
coming down. When you have something like the Voting Rights Act of 1965 protecting all states, all minority voting populations, you know, that helps everybody.
It does.
But when they come in and say, well, that's no longer going to be applied, well, what does that mean? That means individual states have to step up to the plate and protect their own voters
Yes.
in their own state. And that's what this bill does. The bill basically bans racially discriminating voting systems and gives our state the authority to act when voting rights are weakened. Okay, so rather than voters having to prove that a new election laws are discriminatory, instead we have jurisdictions that have a history of discrimination against voter discrimination specifically. They need to have election changes pre-cleared by the Maryland Attorney General or a court to show that the new system will not disadvantage minority voters. So rather than the voters having to fight, it's the jurisdictions that are, having discriminatory voting laws that have to prove and get it cleared by the attorney general or the courts to make sure that this is not happening in their jurisdiction. So again, and the disinformation that goes out on a lot of social media channels that AAPI community is accustomed to, like WeChat and WhatsApp. There's a lot of information out there that is wrong, and these groups know that, and they're doing this specifically because they want to make sure they can suppress that vote. Because when people feel confused by what's out there, they no longer have trust in the information that's coming in. And when they don't have the trust, they don't want to participate civically, right?
Yes.
So, another way in which we can combat this is by making sure that you have people that look like those communities running for public office. You'd be surprised, Director Horton, to know how much when you have diverse candidates running for office, it's a game changer. And the reason why is because when you have that, they cast that electoral net far wider than it was before. Because all of a sudden, people come to see a candidate that looks like them. They're like, oh, wow, there's somebody like me that maybe has lived experiences like me. Maybe I want to get engaged now. Now maybe I want to volunteer. Maybe I want to get into running for office myself. Maybe I wanted to get into the space of lobbying or whatever it may be, right? Or become a public servant. I've had individuals that have come up to me during voting and that'll say, I've never seen anybody that looked like me. What can I do to help? This is
Yes.
so exciting to see somebody like you,
Yep.
right?
Yes.
And so that is a game changer as
Yes.
well. So we can combat it in many different ways through our Voting Rights Act that the governor signed into law, to making sure that we have more diverse candidates that look like our communities running for office, and to make sure that we let our trusted community members go on the social media channels and say, look, this is misinformation, this is wrong, please don't pay attention to that,
Yes.
right?
Yes. And I hope everybody is taking all of this in, right? I know there are many times when folks call Maryland the northernmost southern state, but I am proud to be a Marylander, right? And anybody that is listening to our Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller today in this podcast, I know you all are equally as proud to be a Marylander. So right now, I know we've started. We've been online for a few minutes. Call a friend. Tell them to hop on and listen to this podcast right now too, as we continue this conversation with our transformational Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller. So I wanna hop to a topic around STEM, right? Because I know STEM is near and dear to your heart as well. How can states remove barriers in education and tech industries so that folks and youth within the AAPI community and women of color have a fair shot at breaking into these historically non-inclusive fields?
Love this question. And this is, as you said, Director Horton, near and dear to my heart. As you know, I am a STEM major, I'm a civil engineer, and I know how the STEM career opened up doors for me, how it changed my life. And so, of course, I want to make sure that other people's lives can change even more than mine did as a result of the education that I received. So here's the thing about STEM that's really dynamic is that in the 21st century, just about everything that we're facing, whether it's climate change, healthcare, transportation, all of these fields are going to need a STEM education or a foundation to come up with the solutions to address the challenges that we face, right?
Yep.
So STEM isn't just about what it does for you. The bigger part of it is what it does for others, how you can help society as a whole. So that's why it's so important for me to make sure that we get the biggest talent pool out there to be focused in these educational careers, right? Because right now it's open to a fraction of our talent pool. And I want to make sure it's opened up to people of color and women, because nothing is going to transform technology and STEM fields as much as diversity of thought. If the same people that are coming to the table are coming up with the solutions, that's not going to be the outlook for the future, because the world is changing so much. The world is getting more and more diverse, right? Particularly in our country.
Yes.
And so you got to bring as much diversity of thought to the table as you can. And the good thing about STEM fields, you don't need to have a 4-year degree. You can come out and do an apprenticeship. In fact, the state of Maryland is actually supporting apprenticeships in tech fields and cybersecurity and all. You can get an associate's degree. You can get a 4-year degree and walk out with any of those with a high paying career. So this will be a great way to be able to close the racial wealth gap, to be able to get more people of color into these fields that are high paying, very dynamic, but you don't need to have the expensive 4-year college degree to get into these.
Amazing. One of the things that we've been consistently talking about is recently we've seen historic numbers of federal job losses, right? And instability around the visa process. How can states adapt their workforce development program to protect the civil and economic rights of those AAPI immigrant workers?
Sure. And to your point, Director Horton, let's talk about the federal jobs in the state of Maryland. One, Maryland is rich with federal agencies. In fact, we're home to over 60 federal agencies in the state of Maryland, 20 military installations. But this is fantastic because the best and the brightest come here to the state of Maryland because we have all these institutions that they can work at. And it has been a significant part of our economy for the longest time, and it still continues to be. In fact, I think there's a quote out there that 1 in every 6 workers in the state of Maryland work for the federal government. All right. So here's the thing: we have over close to about 160,000 federal jobs that are located in the state of Maryland. Okay. And we have over 270,000 Marylanders that work directly for the feds. Okay. So it's a big part of our economy. In fact, 10% of our GDP is from the federal government. With the egregious actions that came from the Trump-Vance administration, we've lost over 31,000 federal jobs in the state of Maryland, more than any other state. So what are we doing about this? Well, the first thing we did was to create a website so every federal worker can go to one central location, whether they're looking for unemployment benefits or they're looking for another job. We made sure that all those postings would be available at our website, one central location for them. We gave them training to make sure they can come in. Could we get them into other jobs like feds to eds, to have them actually become educators, to streamline that process so they can get the certification and go into teaching because they come with so much knowledge and wealth. We don't want to lose that. These are dedicated federal public servants. We want to make sure that we take advantage of all the skill sets they have, but more importantly, that they have a place that they can land in, right? Yeah. So another way in which Governor Moore is trying to meet the needs of these displaced federal workers is to diversify our economy. So we are doing that. I mean, Governor Moore has always said that Maryland is asset rich and strategy poor, but no longer, because we are diversifying our economy and we're focusing on the lighthouse sectors, which is AI, quantum computing, cybersecurity, life sciences, the aerospace. These are private sectors that have lots of jobs available. So we want to make sure that these displaced federal workers could go into these jobs. And a lot of them are that come from the AAPI community as well.
And I think you just highlighting that just again shows how Maryland is leading the way, right? So I think we just got another hashtag, right? Hashtag Maryland leads the way, right? I think that again, just thinking about the transformational leadership that even though Maryland is taking a significant hit due to these federal job losses, the leaders that we have, like yourself and Governor Moore, are leading us through a very transient time where, we always talk about leadership and the fact that it is very easy to lead in times of comfort. Yeah. Right? Real leadership shows up in times of discomfort, when you've got to make hard decisions, when you've got to use your voice and knowing that using your voice is also going to make you a target. Yep. Right? Because Maryland has been a target, right? But I am proud to say that Maryland has been a target because of transformational leaders like yourself, Lieutenant Governor Miller, and Governor Moore, who haven't been afraid to speak up on behalf of Marylanders. Right?
I absolutely agree with you, Director Horton. Let me tell you, our governor is a U.S. Army combat veteran of the 82nd Airborne. He's not about to bend his knee for anybody, and certainly not Donald Trump. He's going to push back and fight as hard as he can for every Marylander, and I'm going to do the same. So I want all your listeners to know that you got the best with Governor Moore, pushing back against this administration, and we're going to do everything to be there for Marylanders.
And you all have, right?
Thank you.
And that just reminds me of the one of the more infamous quotes from Martin Luther King that says, "The time is always right to do what is right." Yep. And I do again commend you and the governor for always doing what is right.
Thank
I
you.
do thank you for that.
Thank you.
So when we think about I want to talk a little bit about faith and how we bridge divides, right? So you chair the Maryland's Council on Interfaith Outreach, which you spoke of earlier. And that council works to increase religious tolerance and hate. How are you working with faith leaders across the state to protect the civil liberties of minority religious institutions against rising religious intolerance?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And this is exactly why we created the Interfaith Outreach Council, right? To be able to bring in leaders of all different faiths. Again, faith community is where most people go to in their moments of fear, and if they're looking for healing and they're looking to belong, that's the first place they go. And why is that important? Because that's an institution of trust that is there already. And again, we want to make sure that we get these leaders of trust at the same table. Again, they represent different communities, different initiatives, different challenges these communities are facing. They can tell us, look, this is what my community is facing. This is how you, the government, can help us, right? So we bring them to the table, and we have leaders from Islamic faith, the Jewish faith, Christian faiths, the Hindu faith, the Sikh community. So it is just a beautiful diversity of leaders that come together. And there are a lot of things that have happened in which faith communities come together to be able to lift up one another. You know, you talked about earlier that when you see others being discriminated against or hate being thrown at a community, all our brothers and sisters need to come together and push back against it as much as we can, right? That's what it's all about. So, how has the faith community and this council work? It's been great. Look, I can tell you from my own personal experience, I grew up in an interfaith home. My mother was Christian or Catholic, and my dad was a Hindu. And I remember when my siblings and I were growing up, my mother would take us to Sunday school, and then when we came home, my dad, we sat together and prayed to Hindu gods, right? Here's my mom and dad, lived their whole life together. There was never an issue that your faith is wrong and my faith is better than yours. They coexisted beautifully together. In fact, my father passed away, in 1999. Since that time, my mother's been living at our home. And you go into her room, you see a picture of Mother Mary, Jesus Christ, right there next to her are Hindu gods as well. She still puts that up on her wall, right? And that's really what it's about, that we can all coexist together, because at the end of the day, faith is really about lifting up our communities, right? That's what it's about, to be there in their greatest hour of need, to say that, look, it's going to be okay, we're here for you. And so based on that, that's what this council is, intended to do as well. And I'll give you an example. When the FSK bridge collapsed, we had, unfortunately, 6 workers that perished as a result. So I ended up going to every one of those funerals, right? And you could imagine the devastation and the grief that the families were going
I can
through,
only imagine.
right?
Yeah.
And here was one of our faith leaders in our interfaith, not just one, but several, but the Islamic Society of Baltimore, who's under the leadership of Hassan Hamad. He brings his brothers up to the funeral to be able to pay for the food and other things that are taking place at the funeral, because they knew that the families couldn't afford it. That's what interfaith is all about. That they, exactly what they did. And not only that, but, one of the positive things that came about, I don't know if you were able to come when the monks visited Annapolis.
I was.
You were.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let me
Powerful
just,
moment.
powerful moment. And I'll tell you, it was divine intervention that came together to make it happen. So here the monks had just ended their 2,200-mile tour in Washington, D.C., I think it was. And one of the people that I know reached out, or he and I talked about, hey, we should do a peace walk ourselves, the interfaith group. And he said, well, why don't we reach out to the monks? And I'm like, no, they're not going to come here. Are you kidding? They've already been programmed to be at all the different places. He said, no, let's reach out. So he's actually the head of the South Asian Commission. He reaches out and tells me the monks are ready to come to Annapolis.
Yeah.
And I'm like, are you kidding me? We literally, Director Horton, had about a week to prepare for their arrival. And I remember, I mean, my team was fantastic, and same with a Department of General Services, the Capitol Police. I mean, so many groups that came together to make it happen in such a short period of time. I remember the night before, I lied awake in bed all night. I'm like, what if only 100 people are going to show up? I would feel terrible to bring the monks, all the way to Annapolis in this cold
small amount
weather.
of people.
Right, right. And nobody is there.
Overwhelming support, though.
There was over 10,000 people that came.
Yes.
I was so taken aback by the level of engagement and support, and really the tranquility and peace that you saw while they were there. The Capitol Police said they've never had a situation where they had that many. That was the highest number of people that have ever come to an event in Annapolis. It even exceeded our inauguration, where nothing happened, meaning no acts of violence or things of that nature happened. Everything was peaceful, because this is what the community is seeking:
Yes.
tranquility, peace, unity, more love, less hate.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it was so powerful.
It was, and it just as you're talking, I'm just thinking about, regardless of whatever faith you ascribe to, I think it's always interesting. I think the biggest question for all of us is, how can you love, honor, and respect a higher being that you can't see if you are unable or unwilling to love, honor, and respect your fellow brothers and sisters
That's right.
that you can't see,
That's right.
right?
Beautifully said.
Well, I think, Lieutenant Governor Miller, I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I know you have a state to help run. But I do want to, again, thank you for your time here today. I want to make sure we go back through some of our hashtags, right? Hashtag more love, less hate. Hashtag Maryland leads the way, right? Hashtag Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller rocks. I just added another one. But I think I also want to remind folks that you can go to our website at www.mccr.maryland.gov and go to our events page, and you can get all of our information about all of our upcoming events, such as the cinemas and convos that I mentioned during the podcast. Also, we have our annual Civil Rights Gala coming up in September, Saturday, September the 26th at Maryland Live. We are hopeful that everyone who's listening to this podcast will be there. We're hopeful that our wonderful Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller will be there. It's just an opportunity for us all to gather and celebrate and inspire each other around the great work that this state is doing around civil rights. So I am going to turn it back over to you, Lieutenant Governor, if there are any closing remarks that you would like to say to our audience today.
Yes, absolutely. Two more hashtags. Hashtag leave no one behind. Hashtag Cleveland Horton Justice Warrior.
I like that. And with that, again, we appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us today on our podcast, Lieutenant Governor. And again, I can't say thank you enough, right?
Thank you.
As we think about this moment requires real leadership. And I want you and Governor Moore to know that everybody at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights sees you, we respect you, and we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Right? Being a lieutenant governor of any state is not an easy job, but being lieutenant governor of the best state is an even more difficult job, right?
That's the greatest privilege of
but
all.
We couldn't have a better lieutenant governor than you, Lieutenant Governor. So again, on behalf of the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights, we applaud you. Just know that you always have a friend at the Maryland Commission on Civil Rights.
Thank you.
If there's anything that we can do to assist you in the work that you do, please, we want you to know. Just reach out and let us know.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
To our audience, thank you all for tuning in. This has been a very information-packed session. We look forward to seeing you all next time. Until then, just remember, as I always say, take care of each other, and always remember, like Martin Luther King said, the time is always right to do what is right. Until next time, see you later.